Have started the recording.
Excellent. Well, welcome everyone. I am Cheryl Coulier. I'm the Open Education Librarian at the University of Arizona. And we're just going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to stop my video to preserve bandwidth. I'm sharing bandwidth with a college student. So we'll cross our fingers and hope this goes great. So welcome to Open Ed 20 and this fabulous open education community. It's full of generous, helpful people, and we are so glad you're here. Sharing is a core OER value, so these slides are available in Sched for you to reuse and customize if you want. We have just 25 minutes today, so I can only cover some basics, but I want you to leave here with a wealth of OER tools. This online OER toolkit features the sites and resources I'm about to show you and much more. The toolkit is uploaded to Sched, and the link should be in the chat, which I can't see anymore. There's a lot of confusion between free resources and OER. People can find tons of free content online, including illegally pirated content. But the permissions and customizability make OER unique. So in order to be considered an open educational resource, it needs to be free to the user and give people the freedom to do the 5 R's. So the first R is retain, which means you can download or duplicate. Reuse means you can use it more than once in a variety of ways. Revise means you can modify or translate. Remix means you can combine it, mash it up into something new. And redistribute means you can share copies. Creative Commons licenses make the 5 R's possible, and I won't go into detail on these licenses. They're resources in the toolkit, but I want you to be able to recognize these symbols for OER. And Creative Commons licenses permit you to reuse content for free. But anything with the ND element, no derivatives, which is the equal sign on the bottom row, is not considered OER because it doesn't allow you to redistribute if you've revised. And remember those 2 R's. ND content is still free to use though. TED Talks, for example, use CC BY NC ND. The license that's the least restrictive is CC BY up in the top left. Even more flexible than a CC BY license is content that's in the public domain and free of copyright. So generally, if a work was first published in the US in 1924 or earlier, or if it was published by the US government, it's probably in the public domain. And Creative Commons offers these 2 tools for marking works in the public domain. The first is for marking other people's works, and the bottom one, CC0, is for creators to mark their own works and put them in the public domain. There's no central repository for OER, so searching can involve a bit of a treasure hunt. All of these resources are listed in the toolkit, and in the next few slides, I'll walk through some of my favorite sites for finding OER. And I'll just pause here too to say that I can't see the chat and I can't see questions until the end. So if you have a question as we go, please type it in the chat and I've left time for questions at the end. For college textbooks, the Open Textbook Library is the first place I personally look. Run by the Open Education Network, the library currently has more than 800 complete textbooks. Most have faculty-authored reviews. OpenStax is my favorite OER publisher. It's a project out of Rice University. And for classes in science, math or statistics, business, economics, US history or government, psychology or sociology, it's a great option. And the 2E on these covers indicates that these are all second editions. In September, OpenStax announced $12.5 million in new grant funding that will allow it to more than double the number of books it offers to 90 titles. So new books are planned for nursing, engineering, technology, yay, liberal arts, science, math, and business courses at the college and high school levels. Each OpenStax book comes with free resources for instructors, like PowerPoint slides and problem solutions. This anatomy and physiology book also has course cartridges for various learning management systems and a video guide. If instructors want courseware for student practice or homework or quizzes and tests, OpenStax partners with a variety of technology companies to make low-cost add-ons an option. And OpenStax tutor courseware for Advanced Placement US History is freely available to everyone. Other OpenStax tutor courseware is freely available to members of its institutional partners program. Otherwise, it's $10. LibreTexts is another great resource. It's an OER project based at the University of California, Davis. And in 2018, they received a $5 million grant from the US Department of Education. So it features nearly 400 textbooks, text maps, and LibreTexts, plus free interactive tools, Spanish language materials, and an OER remixer. LibreTexts also has a workforce library. And for more vocational education resources, Skills Commons features workforce training materials for a range of careers. The US Department of Labor invested $1.9 billion in this OER project, which was managed by Cal State Long Beach and Merlot. Content covers construction, manufacturing, healthcare, IT, and more. For K through 12 content, I encourage you to check out CK through 12. It has OER for science, shown here, math, social studies, and photography. OpenStax also offers 7 high school textbooks, including some for advanced placement courses. Oasis is a mega search tool from SUNY Geneseo that can help you find OER from 117 different sources. It also allows you to browse by subject and by specific content types, including textbooks, videos, full courses, and interactive simulations. We have this Oasis search box embedded on our Find OER page, and a link to the widget code is in the OER toolkit. For OER by discipline, BC Campus publishes this helpful directory, which is regularly updated. The resources page from Open Oregon offers another way to find materials by discipline or by course. It lists open and alternative course materials that Oregon instructors use. It's not limited to textbooks. I'll say that despite all of these great tools, it's not always possible to find OER for a particular course. I encourage instructors to keep checking back because new OER come out all the time. The Open Textbook Library and the Rebus community track open textbooks in development. If OER doesn't exist yet, one option is to create them. A number of guides offer help with creating and adapting OER. The Open Education Network also offers a publishing curriculum that's free to everyone. And all of these are linked in your toolkit under OER Publishing, Customization, and Open Pedagogy. This summer at the University of Arizona, we launched Pressbooks EDU as a publishing platform to support OER creation. We're really excited about the upcoming Pressbooks directory, which is scheduled to go live later this month. It'll make it much easier to find Pressbooks publications like these that we can clone and customize. We can also introduce faculty to the option of open pedagogy, involving students in the creation of OER. So rather than doing disposable assignments, students can engage in deeper and more active learning and contribute to the world's knowledge commons. This website, Open Pedagogy Notebook, features a variety of examples and ideas, and you can see some other ideas here on the screen. At my institution, open pedagogy is what faculty are most excited about. To learn more about OER, there are some fantastic tools out there. Open Oregon has this FAQ about finding, using, and creating OER. Abby Elder of Iowa State has developed this great OER starter kit. Then she and Stacy Katz remixed it into the starter kit workbook, which features worksheets for instructors to practice the skills they need to find, use, and create OER. The Open Education Network's certificate in OER librarianship, and full disclosure, I'm an instructor in that, made its online modules freely available, and you can find that link in the toolkit. So there's a lot of free content out there for learning more about OER. When you're talking with instructors and administrators about OER, the quality question is bound to come up. Pre-COVID, I found it helpful to keep a stack of print OpenStax books in my office. At events, I'd set up a textbook petting zoo. To answer quality questions, I share that publishers like OpenStax and SUNY Open Textbooks use a formal peer review system, just like commercial publishers do. I also point out the user reviews on sites like the Open Textbook Library, OER Commons, and Merlot. The public speaking book shown here in the Open Textbook Library has 48 reviews. So instructors can go on and see what colleagues at other institutions think of the content. And the reviews cover a 10-category rubric. In the OER toolkit under best practices for course materials, you can also find some really handy checklists for evaluating OER that were developed by Open Oregon. You may also get questions about accessibility, and BC Campus offers an accessibility toolkit, and its BC Open Textbook Collection is home to 331 textbooks. Of those, 117 meet accessibility criteria and are marked with this accessible logo. You can see it in green at the bottom. It's up to instructors as the subject matter experts and the experts on how they teach their classes to choose the best course materials for them. I see it as my job as the Open Education Librarian to present them with a range of options. And I found it helpful to frame it as a spectrum of affordability. And I have to credit Stephen Ball at Temple for this phrase. I will say that OER aren't the only tool in our affordability toolbox. They're not even the most frequently used on our campus. We have a big program to deliver unlimited user ebooks to courses. But I start with OER because of the free access, the perpetual access, and the customizability. Next, we'll look at library license materials. If these free to use options aren't available or aren't a good fit, I do refer faculty to our bookstore to explore inclusive access, which automatically bills students for digital content if they don't opt out. There are pros and cons to inclusive access, and if you want to read more about it, there are resources in the PowerPoint notes. But all three of these options provide day one access to course materials, which is critical for student success. To help instructors discover free-to-use course material options, I recently launched this check for ebook availability form on the library website. If unlimited user ebooks aren't available through the library, which they usually aren't, we can recommend OER or other library resources. So far, it's been pretty popular and in a good way to explore these options with instructors. For those of you building OER programs at your institutions, I understand that it can feel a bit overwhelming. Know that there's a lot of support out there, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can find resources in the toolkit under advocacy and OER training. One of them is Lumen Learning's OER Champion Playbook, which features resources for making the case for OER, measuring impact, building awareness and enthusiasm, supporting faculty through change, and sustaining change and impact. Participants in the Certificate in OER Librarianship have developed extensive action plans, and you can find samples of those in a link in the PowerPoint notes, and use those as a template for getting started with your own plans. New programs can start by reaching out to campus partners. Our campus-owned bookstore and instructional designers have been incredible collaborators in our affordability efforts. The disability resource can be an overlooked partner, but they're so important. I encourage you to connect with these national organizations, which offer lots of webinars and community support. We joined the Open Education Network, and I think membership is worth every penny. The OEN also offers a lot of free resources to everyone, including a great library of YouTube videos. We belong to Spark, which advocates for all things open education, open access, open data, and I've listed some great Spark resources in the toolkit. We're also an OpenStax institutional partner. And for community colleges, I recommend CCC OER. All of these organizations have active listservs where you can ask questions, share resources, and get help finding OER. Spark's listserv is open to all. I also joined CCC OER's listserv, even though I'm not at a community college. You'll find links to these and other organizations in the toolkit under networks. You may be afraid that you don't have the time or money to do OER. It's okay if you don't have grant funding or an OER budget. I don't. I keep asking for one-time funds, but here are a few low budget ideas to get started. If you're a librarian or instructional designer, offer to help faculty find OER. Maybe reach out to instructors who teach subjects covered by OpenStax books. They're the closest equivalent I've found to the expensive course in a box. You can offer trainings, and a number of us share our workshop slide decks, so you don't have to create your own. You can just adapt them. I've had good results by asking for time at college and department meetings to do a short presentation and to share subject-specific OER. You can start a learning community. I did this last year for OER and this summer for Pressbooks and Open Pedagogy, and it was great to get projects rolling that way. If switching textbooks sounds like too much work for instructors right now, encourage them to pilot OER, even as a supplemental resource. See how students like it. And students are great OER advocates. Coordinate with them on presentations and resolutions. You can raise awareness of textbook affordability barriers through student stories and videos, and cultivate faculty champions. We created these textbook hero posters featuring faculty who use OER. Our website also features courses that use open textbooks. Some campuses give out faculty awards. So we've covered a lot of ground here. But this is my takeaway message. You can do this. Remember that everyone started small. I'd like you to take just a few seconds now to write down one action that you can take. Think of one seed that you can plant. The return on investment and impact on student success are huge. You can make education more affordable, accessible, and inclusive. And this may not be a great photo to illustrate my point, because you may be thinking, those rocks look sharp and painful. So instead of picturing rocks, picture thousands of open education colleagues here to catch you and support you and make the leap. And hopefully I've left about 5 minutes for questions. And I understand I can stay 15 minutes past that to answer additional questions. So I'll leave this up for a second so you can see my contact information and the bit.ly link to the OER toolkit. Feel free to reach out after the conference, during the conference. Valerie, were there questions that came up in the chat?
Not any that didn't get answered. Basically, questions about a link to your presentation and a link, again, a repeat link to the OER toolkit, but nothing specific yet.
Ah, okay. Let's see. In the chat, I can actually upload the PowerPoint, and let's see, can I? Yes, I can upload the PowerPoint and the handout. Okay, so that's that one. File. Sorry, I'm negotiating all the files on my desk. OER toolkit. Okay, because I know they can be difficult to find in Sched. But if you go to the presentation site, they're linked from there. And thanks for reposting the OER toolkit link.
So there was one question, I think it got buried maybe. Do you know of any additional sources for Spanish language OER?
Oh gosh, yes. Contact me offline because I'm drawing a blank on the name. But there's a, yes. I'm afraid I can't think of it right offhand. In the toolkit, in addition to the resources by discipline, there's also a CCC OER link to resources by subject. But I know there are a lot of language resources. I would check first in the Open Textbook Library. Oh, good. Somebody else put a suggestion. Oh, okay. Brian Hickam. Okay, thanks. I will. Thank you. Oh, and someone else put a link in the chat. The españolaabierto.org. Fabulous. I'm not familiar with that one, so I always love learning about new things from other people. Any guidance on educator incentivization grants? Oh boy. There are some great examples out there of well-run grant programs. I would look to Open Oregon and Affordable Learning Georgia, and UMass Amherst and Temple actually had two of the very first grant programs. They've been doing this for a long, long time. Some are purely OER, some are a combination of OER and other affordable course materials. But all of those programs are so generous about sharing all of their documentation and how-tos. So there's a lot of information out there on how to do a grant program. As far as sustainability and funding, one of the things that we're exploring is actually donor funding. Since the library budget is being cut and we haven't been able to get administrator buy-in for OER projects. So I know that Oregon State University funds its publishing, or sorry, Portland State University funds its publishing program through donor funding. So that's an option. Oh, great. I'm so glad people are sharing contact information in the chat. I encourage you to download the chat before we close this session, because the chat, as I understand it, will not be saved and linked with the recording. Any hints for CTE training materials? Sorry, I'm not familiar with CTE. If you were to choose the top 3 open textbook sites, what would they be? My first stop is Open Textbook Library. Second stop is Oasis. And if I know that OpenStax has the content I'm looking for, I'll go directly to their sites because they have all of the student and instructor resources linked there. So there are a lot of other tools out there. Mason has the Mason OER Meta Finder. So that's out there as another search tool. I will say that I've run into some issues with faculty and Merlot because it's such a combination of OER and other types of content. And so sometimes they'll get all excited about a book that they found in Merlot, and it will be from one of the providers that supplements with advertising. So explaining that, yes, that's free, but it's not OER. Corral, thank you. That is the one I was drawing a blank on. Thank you so much for posting that. Career technical education. Yes, so LibreText has workforce materials, and Skills Commons is the other big place. Yes, great. Thank you for answering that, Brittany. Oh, this is fabulous that you're all sharing these resources with each other. Top OER for science courses, I would go first to OpenStax and second to LibreTexts for science. And I'm assuming when you say science courses, you're looking for a lot of the videos and interactive simulations and not just a textbook. Ooh, great, Open Language Resource Center. Resources for health sciences. Yes, these are in development. So one of the second grants that was awarded by the Department of Education went to a project that's developing nursing materials. So some of those are out, and you can find some content in the Open Textbook Library and in LibreTexts. But it's an area that does need development. So I was super happy to see OpenStax say they're working on more nursing content. Introduction to computers classes. I would look in the Open Textbook Library. There's quite a bit on computers and information technology in there. The OER certificate in librarianship, or yeah. Yes, you do need to be a librarian to apply, although we're looking at that and thinking of expanding it to other folks, since not just librarians work on OER programs, but right now it is librarian specific. The application for the cohort for 2021 actually just ended. But like I said, all of the online materials are freely available online through Canvas. So that's a great place to go and learn. And I really recommend looking at those action plans. Folks in the first cohort did such a great job on planning all kinds of different aspects as far as communication and measuring impact and timelines and SMART goals. So you can find examples of all of those. The less we need to create things ourselves, and the more we can adapt what other people have already done, I think the better. Oh, thank you for sharing the link to the nursing pharmacology book.
Cheryl, I'm going to stop the recording, and everyone's free to stay on for another 10 minutes, but I'm going to stop the recording at this point. And then in 10 minutes, I think we will be forced to disperse, but feel free to continue with the questions.
Okay,